So thank you. Peace be upon you all. I hope you are all keeping fine. There are students of B Honors in English second year as well as of third year. So have you joined? Please comment. Can you listen to me well? Please comment. I would like to start quickly because we have a little time in hand today. We can continue up to 9:55. So please let us share the lesson today. Today's lesson is on Victorian period, and I will bind myself with some questions and answers, practically focusing your examination. So today's lesson is Victorian Age of English literature. Today I will start with question. When did Victorian era start? We know Victorian era in English literature started in 1832. When did it end? It ended in 1901. Why is the age named as Victorian age? This age is named as Victorian age after the name of Queen Victoria, who reigned England from 1837 to 1901. At the age of 18, she was inducted to power and she reigned as the Queen of England up to her death. Now, what are the main characteristics of Victorian age? The main characteristics of Victorian age are a compromise between religion and science, faith and doubt, material prosperity and spiritual downfall, compromise between the poor and the rich, between democracy and kings, between development of aristocratic people and destituteness of lower class people. In short, what are more prominent or more important to mention during Victorian period are material prosperity, advancement of science, urbanization, industrialization, Islamization, changing of life from agro-based rural society to industry-based urban society, unhygienic and ugly living of the working class people in slums nearby big industries, disappearing of small industries and establishing of bigger capital-based industries. These were the general condition. In the case of science, religious faith was ground to dust because of newer advancements in science and technology, because of publishing of newer books of science. In politics, there is stability, order, and peace. In economy, there was a rapid development, especially of national economy. English Empire included Canada, Australia of the West, here of the East, Singapore, Hong Kong, India, of Africa, South Africa, and Kenya. These were the colonies of England during the reign of Queen Victoria. So we can understand that there was development in economy, in science, in military power. England that time was the largest importer and exporter of goods. England imported silk and cotton from her colonies and exported finished goods to them, to those colonies. So these were the in the case of social life, there was a sense too, especially women had liberty, but they couldn't live a decent life. They couldn't live a decent life. They had to live under poverty, especially single women. Children had to work in inhuman conditions in factories as chimney sweepers, as printers' devils, like this. So these were, in short, the main characteristics of Victorian period. Now let me mention let me ask a question, then I will answer. What are the main political changes do you notice during the time of Queen Victoria? Look, in 1832, the first Reformation Bill was passed. Here, voting right was given to those people who had property. In 1833, factory work law was passed. In 1833 also, the slaves were declared free. In 1840, Chimney Sweeps Act was passed. In 1867, in the Second Reformation Act, voting rights were given to the working class people. And in 1883, in order to avoid a class struggle between the rich and the poor, between the higher class owners of industries and the lower class workers in industries, there was a struggle, there was a possibility of a struggle. In order to shake the struggle, avoid the struggle, Fabian Society was formed in 1883. In 1884, the Third Reformation Act was passed. These were the major political events and incidents during the reign of Queen Victoria. Anyway, let me mention what are the main trends of Victorian period. We know the main trends of Victorian period starts from 1832 to 1990, not on, but within this time there was a tendency. among some writers, and that tendency was Pre-Raphaelitism. What is Pre-Raphaelitism? Now let me make it clear to you. Pre-Raphaelitism. Raphael was an Italian artist. He was a painter during Renaissance in Italy. His lifetime was 1483 to 1520. Some painters of Victorian period like D.G. Rossetti, Dante Gabriel Rossetti, W.H. Hunt, William Holman Hunt, J. Millais, John Everett Millais, they wanted to stand away from the Victorian trend. Within Victorian age, they wanted to stand away from the Victorian trend and establish a new trend. They wanted to follow the painters and artists who lived and who practiced paintings before the time of Raphael in Italy. So they wanted to follow the ideal of the painters who lived and worked in Italy before Raphael. Now let me tell what were their ideals. What are the ideals of Pre-Raphaelites? The ideal of the Pre-Raphaelites was to find was to express humble and self-forgetfulness, humble adherence to truth. In Bangla, let me make it clear, সহজ সরল নিরভিমান আনুগত্য সত্যের প্রতি, এটি একটি তাদের ট্রেন্ড ছিল। এটি ছিল টু ফাইন্ড in devotion, especially in spiritual devotion, devotional feelings, religious feelings. Within it, they wanted to find sweetness, order, peace. They wanted to find sweetness, order, peace in devotional feelings. They wanted to stand away from Victorian morality, rapid changes of Victorian time, rapid advancement of Victorian time. These Pre-Raphaelites, they wanted to avoid the trends, main trends of Victorian time. Let us be clear. Though they were within Victorian period, they wanted to avoid Victorian trend. They are called Pre-Raphaelites. They believe that art is for art's sake. Art is not for man's sake, or art is not for life's sake. That is, they believed art has no utility. Art does not have any responsibility to change life, to modify life, to rectify life, to remove the vices from the trains of life. So this belief was mainly predominant among the Pre-Raphaelites. Their poetry was highly pictorial. They gave vivid description, and in order to give vivid description, especially feminine beauty, somewhere they turned to sensuousness, and in some cases their sensuousness turned to sensuality. ইন্দ্রিয় সুখ পরায়ণতা থেকে কখনো কখনো কামুকতার দিকে ধেয়ে গেছে তাদের এই দৃষ্টিভঙ্গি। For this reason, some critics have called them fleshy artists. So, in short, I have told about who are the Pre-Raphaelites, what are the ideals of the Pre-Raphaelites, what are their time. The Pre-Raphaelites formed a school of Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood in 1848 and it ended in 1860. The major poets and painters of this Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood, Pre-Raphaelite School of Poetry were D.G. Rossetti, W.H. Hunt, John Everett Morris, C.G. Rossetti, Christina Georgina Rossetti. They were mainly the members and the followers and leaders of Pre-Raphaelite Brotherhood or Pre-Raphaelite School of Poetry. Now, let me talk about the next trend of Victorian period. Within Victorian Victorian age, there was another trend in literature that started in 1880 and ended in 1890. It had a short time, and thus that trend is named as the age of decadence or the age of aestheticism. In Bangla, it is called Kala Koibollobad. Aestheticism. They believe this aestheticism means, again, poetry has no objective, art has no objective but to modify itself. Anyway, why is the later ages of Victorian period from 1880 to 1890 called age of decadence? Because during this time, the Victorian spirit got lost. I shouldn't say strictly lost, but Victorian spirit decreased. Spirit for adventure, spirit for conquering material prosperity, these were disappearing in the later decades of Victorian period. So let me now tell about another point, another question. During Victorian period, there was a great movement in Oxford University. It is known as Oxford movement. Why is it called Oxford movement? It is called Oxford movement because this movement was centered at Oxford University and at the city of Oxford. What is Oxford movement? Oxford movement basically is a religious movement that had an aim, an objective to protect Catholic belief, Catholic Church from the interference of the state, to attack Catholic belief from the interference, from the attack, from the onslaught of scientific discovery. Its main objective also was to re-establish the dignity of the Church and Roman Catholic faith against the Protestantic trend of English Church. That is, to protect Roman Catholic faith, to establish the dignity of the Church, to protect Roman Catholic faith and Church from the attack of liberalism, from the attack of rationalism, to safeguard the spiritual faith of the Roman Catholics. These were mainly the objectives of Oxford movement. So in short, what were the objectives of Oxford movement? The objectives of Oxford movement were to re-establish the dignity of Roman Catholic Church or Catholicism, to protect Catholic Church from the interference of the state, to rehabilitate Catholic faith against Protestants or Protestantism, to save and safeguard long cherished Catholic faith from the onslaught, sudden attack of scientific discovery, to protect religious faith from the attack of rationalism. These were the objectives of Oxford movement. Who started Oxford movement? John Keble, a poet and cardinal, a clergyman, started Oxford movement in 1833. Who was the leader, most prominent figure of Oxford movement? It was John Henry Cardinal Newman, who later converted into Catholicism. And this Oxford movement started in 1833 and it ended in 1845. Thank you. Let me go to another point. What do you know about Darwinism? Or what do you know about Darwin? Or what do you know about the origin of a species? Or write a short note on the origin of a species. It often appears. This question is very much common in our examination. So, what is the origin of a species? The origin of a species is a book. Its original name of On the Origin of a Species by Means of Natural Selection, or the Preservation of Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. It was a book published in 1859 on 24th November. After the publication of this book, the long established religious faith, the foundation of religious faith, got shaken. Darwin traveled the world in 1830s by a ship named HMS Beagle. He traveled to South America and he observed the flora and fauna there, and he got some information of the human beings there and their predecessors there, and he found some mystery within the relation of the existing people then and their predecessors, and thereby he wrote a book. Because when he was at Cambridge University, he was a follower of John Herschel. John Herschel had a philosophy that spiritualism has some task in the process of creation, in the species, creation of a species. But what Darwin got or found was quite against the faith of John Herschel. Anyway, this book, or The Origin of a Species, later on its name was Origin of a Species. First its name was On the Origin of a Species by Means of Natural Selection, as I told, or The Preservation of the Favored Races in the Struggle for Life. Here, thus Darwin has tried to give some documents, some evidences about the creation of humans through evolution, through a natural process. He has given some proofs. He has submitted his studies, researches, experiments, his discussions with others in this book in a very benign way, very polite way. Darwin himself was a very benign person, very amicable person, and he has provided all the information he got regarding the advent of man on earth. Here he has told that from one species, from one common species, the other species on earth are born through a natural process of evolution. This is the theme of the origin of species. This theme of the origin of species, it shook the faith, foundation of faith itself of the Victorian people. So I think our time is nearly has come to an end, because I have very limited time. By 9:55 I have to finish. So let me, I have 5 minutes in hand, go to another point. So we have talked about Victorian Age, its main characteristics, main two trends of Victorian period, Pre-Raphaelitism as a decadence, on movement of Victorian period, Oxford movement. Now I will tell about Victorian literature. During Victorian Age, novel was the highest form of interest in literature. Next to it was poetry. The famous poets of Victorian period, major poets, we know Lord Alfred Tennyson. He was a poet laureate, a representative poet of Victorian period. He conveyed the Victorian spirit. He took raw materials from Greek myth as a means of expressing his Victorian spirit. If we look deep into his poems, we will find that most of the characters, events and incidents he has borrowed from Greek myths, and he has made use of those myths to express his ideas and emotions and concepts, to convey the Victorian spirit in his poetry. Next poet is Robert Browning. He stood away from Victorian time. He dealt with psychoanalysis of eternal man. He was interested in Italian art, literature, music and painting. Next big important poet of Victorian period is Matthew Arnold. Matthew Arnold was against the Victorian trend of rapid changes and rapid development, material development, development of science and technology. He was criticizing, because he considered poetry as a criticism of life, as an application of ideas to life. He believed that one day people will forget religion, but people will not forget poetry. Poetry will take the place of religion. So poetry has a moral purpose. Poetry has a responsibility to moralize human beings, to make people didactic, to give people teaching. So he considered poetry as a criticism of life. He cried against these rapid changes of Victorian period. So we can tell Matthew Arnold as an anachronist. He was fighting against the moral crisis, moral degradation, downfall, godlessness, loss of faith in religion, God, Christianity. He was against this. Now let me tell within 1 minute about Victorian novels. We know Victorian novels are most famous in the history of English literature. Novelists like Charles Dickens, Thomas Hardy, Emily Bronte, Charlotte Bronte, Anne Bronte, they were most famous during their time. So time limited, so thank you. See you again. Hope you will take help from this lecture and the Bangla lecture also from that channel. And if you have any question, you write down the question in the comment section. Because of short of time, I haven't been able to discuss in detail. My main focus was on your examination. Okay, thank you very much. If you have any question, write it down. See you again. Allah Hafiz. Keep fine.